Hello, everyone, and welcome to the PowerSchool Schoology Connect virtual conference. This session is supporting all learners, Schoology, and 504 IEP students. My name is Emily Garrison, and I am the coordinator of educational technology for Palo Alto Unified School District in Palo Alto, California. Just to give you a little background about where I'm from, we are a PK-12 public school district with about 12,000 students, again, in Palo Alto, California, Northern California. We're pretty much in the heart of the Silicon Valley. My job encompasses a number of many different things, including Schoology integration, blended learning, digital citizenship, lots of different areas. But my past is actually as a bilingual elementary and high school Spanish teacher. I'd like to start out this presentation talking about our why. Why are we here today? Why are we having this conversation and thinking about some of these items? First of all, we know that distance learning is kind of the new normal, whether it exists during this time because of COVID-19 or after. I think that the use of technology for teaching and learning will only become more important as we move forward. However, this poses a very particular issue for our students with IEPs and 504 plans, and really thinking about when we're in this highly digital environment, how can we ensure full and equal access for all students? And so what I'd like to do is offer you a number of ideas about what teachers can do in Schoology to support all learners. And the ideas from the slide deck actually have come from three different sources. One is from a teacher that I know who's a high school English teacher in one of the high schools in our district. And she realized that a number of her students were having issues accessing course content. So she really reached out and she started talking with students with 504s and IEP plans, interviewing them, working through Schoology with them and asking them for their opinions and ideas on how to make her course better. And she came out with some amazing results. So that's one of the things that I'm happy to share with you today. A second is something that's known as interface design, and being here in Palo Alto means that technology is kind of a big part of what we do and kind of what we breathe. And so interface design is a concept that has to do with how how humans interact with digital content and how that content is interpreted. So I thought that might be kind of helpful for our conversation. And the third thing is actually totally bizarre, but it comes from the Americans with Disabilities Act. Actually, as part of that act, there is a giant list, a large list of about 35 different website accessibility features that have to be included for any websites that are public facing. Now for us, like interface design, a lot of these elements don't apply, but I think there are some really important things that we can learn from ADA website accessibility that can help us make our Schoology course even better. The other source that I got some information from is actually from parents. So I had a recommendation, a parent email, and it was really interesting, and a lot of the things that she was saying as recommendations after the experience of distance learning can definitely fall into the three buckets that we just saw. So anytime you see an asterisk in this presentation, just know that that's an idea that also was supported by parents. Okay, so we're gonna jump into the first section, which is the information that came from that amazing English teacher who worked so hard to collaborate with her students. And she came up with kind of 5 big ideas when we're thinking about Schoology. First is the use of folders. The second is what she calls the top third. Next, it's keeping students on the screen. The fourth element is reducing visual clutter. And finally, using student-friendly language. So let's jump on in. The first element that she realized that was incredibly important is the use of folders in Schoology. And this comes to a basic kind of overarching theme of designing and organizing your folders within Schoology. Once you have folders there, I highly recommend you use folder colors, you add images and maybe descriptions to give those folders even more life and make them more interesting to look at for your students, as well as provide key information that they're going to find inside of those folders. I also recommend that all teachers consider creating a past work folder. So that means once a unit or a section of work has been completed, the teacher can simply move that folder into the past work folder, and it won't clutter up the feed or make it just this big long list for students to scroll through. It can be put into that past work folder for students to access it later if they need to, but it's kind of like tidying up a little bit. On the opposite side of that, there's also this concept of creating an explore folder. And I'm always kind of interested to see how few teachers actually do this in Schoology. And the idea behind an explore folder is kind of for those high-flying students, the ones who finish first and are always like, oh, what do I do next? What do I do next? Schoology can be endless for us, and so we can really load it with other resources for students to explore on their own. Not anything graded or anything that they have to do, but just other videos or blogs or other things for students to read or interact with to go deeper with topics that they might find interesting. So that's another really good use of a folder. I also recommend that you limit the number of subfolders. Again, you don't want students to have to click and click and click and click and click to finally get to your information. You want to make it as easy as possible for them to find what they need to find inside your course. So limit those subfolders. And finally, one of my favorite app smashing kind of ideas right now is actually using Adobe Spark to create really beautiful images that sit on the outside of your folder to, again, help make your course look really great and help students understand what is inside of that course. So let's take a look at a couple examples. So the example that you see on the left-hand side is actually a Schoology backpack course that I created to help parents get on board with Schoology. And that's an idea that I got from the Schoology Next conference that I attended last summer. So thank you so much to the presenters who gave me that idea. And you can see that these images that are on the outside of the folders are color-coded to the folder, and those were all created on Adobe Spark, and just make it very quick and easy for people to see what's inside of that folder. The example that you see on the right-hand side of your screen is another teacher who has organized her course into 3 folders, the 2 orange folders and the 1 black folder at the bottom. You can see she's using that past work idea. So once things are completed, she simply moves them into the past work area, and that's where they can remain. And then the orange folders are one week of work, and she has images in both of these folders, which is really nice. And I really love in this top folder how she's put on the outside of the folder what is the focus of the work inside that folder. And then I love this idea of including critical considerations. What choices do I make as a writer? What are my reasons for making these choices? Again, to get students kind of interested and ready to interact in the content inside of that folder. Okay, the next idea is this concept of top third. What does that mean? That means that your most valuable real estate in Schoology is what students see when they click onto your course without scrolling. So what is that top third that is very visible to them in your course? Put your most important stuff there. So that means that we might have to drag and drop some folders or some content from the bottom up to the top. But again, we want to make things as easy as we can for students to access our content. Finally, again, we're going to go back to this idea of using folders. That will help us minimize the scrolling that students have to do. It will help minimize kind of the lost items that when students say, oh, I can't find that, or the other questions that come about. So this screenshot is actually from one of our professional learning courses on dyslexia that we run for staff here in the district. And this is the entire course. So you can see at the very top, there's a Schoology page that's the introduction. You have 2 folders of course content. You have a final assessment, and then you have an open forum where people can ask questions. And while this might look very simple, and you think, well, I don't think I can make my course this simple in a regular academic course, I have actually seen teachers who have Schoology courses that look that simple and well organized, especially when they're using that past folder kind of concept in there. Okay, next, this is one of my favorite elements in Schoology, keeping students on the screen. And the key to this is embedding. We want to embed anything we can, including Google Docs, PDFs, videos, external tools, whatever we can get into Schoology, we want in Schoology. We want to reduce the number of clicks that we're asking our students to do, and we want to reduce the downloads also that we're asking students to do. So if you have an old Word document that you're uploading to Schoology and then students have to download to access, that can be a problem because we know that with distance learning, a number of our students actually might be using their cell phones to access our courses, and downloading a large quantity of content on a cell phone can be a little tricky. So we definitely want to embed wherever we can. These are 2 examples of a couple of courses in Schoology that have visuals of embedded content. So on the left here, you can see I just have that how to use Screencastify video from YouTube just embedded right there. And then over here on the right side, we have a Google slide deck, again, beautifully embedded in Schoology. Students can just click through it. So not only does this look really good, but everything is there ready for people to go. No downloading, no extra clicks needed. Okay, reducing visual clutter is also something that is very important. So there's a concept of negative space, which is kind of blank space. And if we have more blank space around our text, it's actually going to improve readability. So that's really important. We always want to make our language concise and clear for our students. Make sure things are very, very clear, especially in that online environment when we're not face-to-face and we're not there to respond to immediate questions if they have it. So we want to be super clear with our instructions. And using the rich text editor to change font sizes or colors, or using bolds and italics and underlining are also very, very nice things to do. So if we look at this course here on the left, we see this course image of a morning message for an elementary course. We see a lot of blank space. We see a larger font here at the bottom, and we see very clear student language. What is your rose? What is your thorn? Use the microphone button to tell me what you think, right? Very, very nice. And we have limited visual clutter here in this example. And finally, we've already kind of talked about this, and we will talk about it some more, but this idea of using student-friendly language. You always have to think about who your end user in Schoology is. Who is your course for? It's for your students. It's not for us as educators. So we always need to be thinking about our students. We have to keep things simple, and we have to keep things clear. So the next section we're going to jump into is this concept of interface design. And the 5 elements that I want to highlight in this section are: consider content, context, and audience, naming conventions, your tone, your use of images, and your text readability. Sounds a little crazy, but we're going to jump in and learn a little bit more about all these areas. Okay, so first, context, content, and audience. As you're setting up your Schoology courses, especially for distance learning, you need to ask yourself 3 critical questions. First, what content do I want to provide? What is going out there? Second, who is this content for? And third, how is my audience going to interpret the information that I'm providing? So those questions kind of give you a nice way to frame your thinking around your course design. Once you've kind of built your course, there's a little test that I like to talk about that's called the 8:47 p.m. on a Thursday night parent point of view test. Now, I know that sounds kind of like a crazy title, but let me explain it. So those of us who are parents or who are teachers and work with students very frequently know that sometimes kids can have difficult moments. And let's just pretend, for the sake of this argument, that there is a 7th grade student who has a giant test or project due on Friday. And it's Thursday night at 8:47, and maybe the student is just getting started. So the student has been working all week, it's late, they're exhausted, they're frustrated, and now the student might be crying, there might be Kleenex involved, it's a mess, and into this world, the parent walks in the room and sees their child just melting down. Now the test is, can your Schoology course, if the parent was to log on to their parent account and look at your Schoology course, can they find the information they need in that moment to help their child get through something very quickly and then get to bed? And if the answer is yes, then awesome, you've created a really good course thinking about your end user in mind. If you don't think that that could happen and you're not providing information that would be helpful for the parent to help their child, then you need to go back and think again about how you're designing your course, okay? So that's the 8:47 p.m. on a Thursday night parent test. So all of this just leads up to, again, this larger concept that taking the time to think about your course design is really, really important. Okay, next, we are going to talk about naming conventions. And this applies in Schoology, in your Google Drive, wherever you're using digital files. It's really important to kind of decide on how you're going to name things and then stick with it. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. Some people will use naming conventions that include their grade level or their subject area or the teacher's name. So whatever you want to do, you want to use that same naming convention all across Schoology. So with every assignment, every discussion board, every assessment, name things the same way. And one of the reasons that we want to do that is especially for our secondary students who have multiple teachers. In our district, our high school students actually have a 7-period day. So taking out my class, they have 6 other teachers that are posting information on Schoology about their courses, and all of our information is ending up on the calendar. So if the student is looking at the calendar and something says homework number 43, how is the student going to understand very clearly who that homework is coming from, for what class, what it is? So we really want to think about our naming conventions because it's very important for students to understand. Now, this example is something I totally made up. This is not a real course. However, I have seen things like this in actual teacher courses. So I just want to bring it up for a second, kind of talking about what I just mentioned, this idea of a giant list of homework number 1, homework number 2, homework number 3, going on and on and on. We don't know from that title who the teacher is, what the course is, or the date of those assignments, which during distance learning, again, has become very, very important. So the more information we can give in that title that then gets carried over into the calendar when we attach a date to it, the more helpful and more organized our course is going to feel for students. So poor design, let's rename. Okay, tone. There's that little asterisk. This is something that a parent also brought up to me. So this concept, again, we've kind of mentioned this before. What are the words that we're using? Are they easy to understand? Is it student-friendly language? And how is that going to be interpreted by the person who's listening? Now, again, this is so important in a digital environment when our text or what we're typing in a flat digital environment doesn't have our intonation, our facial features to help provide students with more information about kind of the context of what we're saying. So how can your written language, how is that going to be interpreted? It's really important to take a moment to kind of think about that. So I just want you to think about 2 examples here. One is, what if in an assignment we just write due by midnight versus ready to publish your work, submit through the button to the right. Right, so those just simple elements of tone are also very important for us to consider when we're thinking about what we're putting on Schoology for our students to access. The other thing too, and this is like a little bonus sub-tip in this tone section, is don't forget to leave that awesome, targeted, meaningful feedback to students in Schoology. It is so simple to do, and it means so much, especially during distance learning. It can feel like a little bit more of a one-to-one human contact for our students, so it's really easy to do and really important. Okay, use of images. This is actually one of my favorite areas to think about in Schoology because images can do so much for your course. They can be aesthetically pleasing and make your course look very beautiful. They can actually provide content. They can be keys to navigation, and they can actually even create an entire overall mood for our course. So I always recommend when we're thinking about images that we start with a really good course image. That top image on the left-hand side of your course as soon as you jump into your Schoology course. You can also consider using a course banner, and I'm going to show you, there's a little kind of hack of how to do that, and I'll show you an example in a second. But you actually want to copy an image from somewhere else in Schoology, paste it into your updates, and then hit the bell or pin them. I'll show you that more in a second, but it looks really cool. I also highly recommend that you always have a smiling professional profile image of yourself because, again, it's going to make that connection and make your students feel like, oh, my teacher is here. And I also highly recommend that you require that of students. It's a really good digital citizenship skill for our students to have to understand the difference between our professional accounts and our personal accounts. So including some kind of crazy distracting GIF in Schoology as student profile image, not the best. So we really want to make sure that everybody is using a professional image and that Schoology is a professional learning environment for everyone. You can also use specific icons to signal different things within your Schoology course, and I really like using emojis for this. So let's take a look. So first of all, this is an algebra course done by some teachers that happened over the summer, and you can see again in that top left-hand corner that awesome course image that says Bridge to Algebra. And then they've also created a course banner here, which is the same image, the same font, but with like tips for success and the date. So I love it. This just looks so inviting, so interesting. I want to walk across that bridge, right? It just makes this course come alive. The other examples I have here are all emojis that I've attached to specific tasks for elementary students. So we know for elementary students every single day, even if they're in distance learning, they're always going to have their morning message, their independent reading time, their read alouds, their science. So always using those images or those icons can help my students understand, oh, it's the hand, that's the morning message, that's what we're doing. So you can just attach that to the top of all of your assignments or lessons in Schoology, and it just helps kind of make things a little bit more clear. Okay, next we're going to jump into text readability. Now this is incredibly important. If we want to have text that students read, we cannot include that as a screenshot or we can't just have an image of text, because if any students are using screen reading software, it's not going to be able to access that. It's going to see that as an image because it is an image. So you actually want to make sure you type out any text that you're using. Some of the ideas that we've talked about before, again, use that rich text editor for bigger fonts, colors, negative space. This is a great example of that. If we look at the folder where it says Monday, April 20th, that's the standard font, but this teacher has clearly changed the font, added colors, added images to make her, her text a little bit more readable for students. Okay, we are at our final section, which is the ADA website accessibility section. And again, most of those requirements do not apply to teachers in Schoology, but we can learn some really cool tips and tricks. Using alt text for images, video captioning, sensory characteristics, meaningful order, and consistent navigation. So let's start with the alt text concept. So again, going back to thinking about students who are using screen reading software, we need to attach some kind of a description to images in order for that screen reading software to be able to tell people what that image is of. So in Schoology, it is incredibly easy to do this. This is just a screenshot of an image that I've inserted on the outside of a folder. So all you're gonna do is click on that image so it becomes highlighted. It turns like this light blue. Then I'm gonna click on the little icon of the image in that top left-hand corner. It's going to open up this edit image pop-up for me. Under image description, I'm just going to type in a quick and simple definition or a description of the image I've included, and then I'm going to update it, and that's it. And as soon as I do that, that screen reading software will be able to read it and tell my student what that image is of. Other people won't be able to see it, so it's very easy to do. Okay, video captioning is another really important thing to think about. Super easy way to do this is just to make your screencasts or videos, upload them to YouTube, and use that kind of automated video captioning service that YouTube offers us, and then just embed them straight in Schoology and tell your students to use captions. But another thing that we can do is when we're using Google Slides, you can actually click on Tools and then click on Voice Type Speaker Notes. And when you're in that slide and you click that, all of your words are actually going to appear in the speaker notes. Or from the presenter mode, you can do the same kind of thing by, in presenter mode, clicking on your menu and then the CC or the closed captioning button, and it will also put live captions there. So this is what it looks like. And it's great for English language learners as well. You always want to include those captions. So this is an example slide deck I had, and you can see the words on the bottom in white. I can now talk as I present, and captions will be automatically added. I just said that and it stuck it on there for me. So what an easy way to do some video captioning when you're using screenshots. Again, you just click on the menu and click on the CC button. Okay, sensory characteristics. Now this sounds like a kind of fancy title, but basically what it comes down to is when you are providing detailed instructions, make it so they aren't reliant on a single sensory ability. So you don't want to just have text or only have video. You want to include both so that students can access your information, your instructions in a couple different ways. This is so easy in Schoology when we use that audio and video capability that's all over the platform. So you definitely want to use that. A couple of examples I can see that we really want to hone in on this sensory characteristics element is when we are providing instructions for assignments or when we're providing feedback to students from the submission activity column. So let me show you what that looks like. This is just an example creating an assignment. Once I've written my text, I simply click on the little microphone on the bottom, and then I can read my text and it will record as an audio file that students can listen to. Or if I want to make a video of myself doing that, I can do that as well. This is the submission activity column, which is that big column on the right-hand side when students submit. I can also do the same thing here. So I can leave some written feedback, and then I can click that microphone and record an audio track or a video track for students if they need more different kinds of input. Okay, next is this concept of a meaningful order. So we really have to think about how we're ordering our Schoology course. And we kind of talked about this already with folders. Are we organizing those folders by unit, by theme, by subject if I'm an elementary teacher? Decide how you're going to use that structure and then just stick with it. Just keep using it. One of the things that I found very helpful when I started thinking about this is this awesome blog post from Schoology that's called 7 Simple Ways to Set Up Your Courses. If you haven't seen that blog post, it's live linked in the slide deck of this presentation, go ahead and just take a look at it. It really helps you kind of think about some of these concepts. And then what we have found during distance learning in our district is actually the most important piece of ordering or folders is naming them by date or by week. So this is a fantastic example of one teacher's course. And you can see that he has here 3 folders. They are organized by week. And then not only that, on the outside of the folder, the teachers actually included the learning targets that the students will be activating that during that week in student-friendly I can statements. I love it. This teachers also set up completion rules, which I know because I got this little check must complete there. Another fantastic technique for distance learning. So this teacher rocking it across the board. Okay, very closely related to that, there is also a concept of consistent navigation. So this is an idea that no matter what we're doing, students are going to be able to figure out where their materials are. We want to make sure that students understand where to find things in our course. When you attach dates to anything that can be graded, so an assignment or assessment or a discussion board, we know that attaching dates is automatically going to also put that item into the calendar so that students can see it. So we can actually kind of backwards map that and walk through the calendar with our students and help them understand that the calendar can also be used as a way to navigate across our course. And this is a recommendation that came from the parent that I think is fantastic. So consider making a screencast or having some kind of a virtual back to school night that you actually walk your students and your families through the way that you organize your course. Here's my folders, and here's where you can find this. And usually when I have assignments, here's where I put it, or here's how I organize it, or here's how you can use the calendar. Just help people walk through what you do, because every teacher uses Schoology in slightly different ways, generally. We have a lot of creativity and openness in Schoology to kind of do what we want to do with the platform, but then it makes it a little bit inconsistent when, again, you have that secondary student with 7 different teachers. You really want to take some time to help families and students understand how to access your course. I also recommend that you use the updates regularly. So for example, a week at a glance, you put that as an update so students can see it. This is a little bonus. Speaking of the use of updates, did you know that you can actually pin an update in your course so it shows at the top of your course as an announcement whether students are in materials or updates? So the way that you do that is you actually start in updates. You're going to write your updates in the regular box that you would, and before hitting post, you're going to click this little drop down and select the little bell icon. Once you do that, you're going to see that that entire update appears not only in updates, but also as an announcement here. So this is one of those examples of here's what you're going to do today, and it's a really, really nice way to communicate with students. But wait, you have one more bonus in this area of consistent navigation, and this is the concept of using templates for your lessons to provide even more consistent learning environment for your students. So you can see here in this example, the teacher has used a table to really be formulaic about the steps in the lesson, what the students need, what they're going to do. So get these things ready. Watch the mini lesson. Here's your independent work, right? She's used colors, she's used font sizes, there's negative space in here, she's got the embedded video. And not only is this template really cool, but then she can save it to her resources, copy it, and use it again and again. So every single time there's reading or writing workshop, she has her template, and all she needs to go in is change the video or change the work that she wants students to do. Again, providing that consistent learning experience for students. Okay, we are at the end of this slide deck, but if you haven't noticed by now, I love little bonus tips. So here's your end of the slide deck, extra bonus tip. AMP customers, if you are using Schoology's assessment management platform, you have an awesome ability to enable a text-to-speech toolbar, which is going to be this little toolbar here that students can press, and it will actually read the assessment to them, which is cool. But for all people, if you're using assessments, you definitely want to make sure your students understand about what features they have in this little accessibility button, because they can change the color, the font size, or zoom in. So we definitely love these features, and Schoology, we would love to see this text-to-speech toolbar across the entire platform. It would be so awesome. So please help us out with that. Okay, in this slide deck, I provided you with lots and lots of ideas, but don't get overwhelmed. Go back through, think about it, and just start with one idea. It's something we do really, really well as teachers. Think of one little thing that you can implement that will make a difference for your students. So big, big thanks to everybody for being here, for joining me today. Again, I hope something in this presentation will prove to be helpful to you. I also have to give a shout out to some of my amazing teacher colleagues. So Kendall Launer, Jen Dorwin, Brian Gaddis, Richard Hung, all of those teachers provided screenshots or gave ideas or contributed some way to the ideas in the slide deck. So awesome, fantastic. They are definitely rock stars, as all of you, I'm sure, sitting here in professional learning over summer are as well. So I just wanted to end with this little quote that says, "Your heart is slightly bigger than an average human heart, but that's because you're a teacher." Thank you again so much. Here's some resources if you'd like to look at some other things that might help you. And now what I'd like to do is go ahead and finish my portion of the presentation and go ahead and open it up for questions. Thank you very much.